Welcome to video 4 in the circulatory unit, where we're going to be talking all about the blood. So one of the first cool things about blood is it's in fact the only liquid tissue in your body. So remember that we defined a tissue earlier in the year as a group of cells working together to perform a function. So normally you would think of this as something like the skin or muscular tissue, but really blood itself does fit that definition, so it's a liquid tissue. And its job is it transports nearly everything within the human body. So here, I'm sorry on this slide, when I uploaded it to my, the program we use to make the videos, the PowerPoint got a little wonky. So your sentence here is that it transports nearly everything, the everything's over here, within the human body. So that's its job. And it's made up of two main components. It's a little bit more than half made up of plasma, which is the liquid in the blood. That's 55%. And then it's a little bit less than half of it is made up of cells, which include red blood cells. And then over here you see I have white blood cells and platelets. So there are three cell types: red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Okay, so this is a diagram that's basically showing you what I just said. So if you took someone's blood out and you put it in a centrifuge, and I think we mentioned a centrifuge earlier in the year, it's basically a machine that spins so fast that the heaviest things, or the most dense things, end up at the bottom of the tube, and the lightest things, or the least dense things, end up on top. So this light stuff, that's what we consider to be plasma, the stuff on top. And plasma includes things like water, the liquid of the blood, salts, so things like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, bicarbonate, all these salts that we use mainly for our pH and to have an osmotic balance. And then there's also, in this plasma, there's a bunch of proteins, so things like albumin, fibrinogen, all the antibodies for your immune system are included in this. And then also anything transported by the blood, so things like glucose, waste, hormones, that's all included in plasma. And then the heavier part of blood is the cells. And like I said, this includes red blood cells, which the big fancy biology word for red blood cells is erythrocytes. White blood cells, which the big fancy word is leukocytes. And there are lots of different white blood cells, so all those different types are listed here. You don't have to worry too much about them right now. And then we also have platelets, which are important for blood clotting. We already know that white blood cells are important for our immune system, and we know, of course, that red blood cells transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, so let's break these down. So plasma, the liquid in your blood, is actually a yellow color. It's sticky, it's straw-colored, but you really can't see that color most of the time because the red blood cells give it a dominating red color. It's mostly made of water, but it also has metabolites, nutrients, gases, hormones, wastes, salts, and proteins. So again, this slide's a little wonky, so make sure you get all those words down. And its main function is it maintains osmotic balance. It helps you control which direction in or out of your cells water is moving. We don't want our cells to have too much or too little water. It helps to maintain a good pH, and then also all these salts, as we saw earlier in the urinary system, helps to maintain kidney function, but as we haven't seen yet, salts are also really important for muscle and nerve function as well. And then let's break down the cell types a little bit. So like we said, the first type of cells are red blood cells, or erythrocytes. We know that their main job is to carry oxygen, and they have a shape that maximizes their surface area and allows them to contain lots of oxygen. So in one red blood cell, or RBC, there are 250 million molecules of hemoglobin, which is the actual protein that can carry oxygen. So it turns out that one red blood cell can carry 1 billion molecules of oxygen. That's a lot of oxygen. Another kind of fun fact about red blood cells, they have no nucleus because it gives them more space to carry hemoglobin to do their job. And on average, in your blood, you have about 5 liters of blood in your body. You have 25 trillion red blood cells. That is so many. It's so much oxygen. Because remember, every single one of your cells need oxygen to do cellular respiration. So our second cell type is the leukocyte, or the white blood cell. And as we saw on that picture, there's lots of different types of white blood cells. We're not going to go into all of them by any means. Just know that their main job is to destroy bacteria, viruses, dead cells, toxic proteins. They're your immune system. They're your defense. They destroy stuff that shouldn't be there. They help your body develop immunities. So, for example, if you've had exposure to a certain bacteria before, you'll already have defense white blood cells set up to attack that bacteria if it returns to your body, which is often why you can't get the same illness twice. And they're different than red blood cells. They have different functions, they have different structures, and different lifespans compared to a red blood cell. The last cell type in blood are platelets. And platelets are kind of funny because they're not actually cells, they're actually cell fragments. And what platelets do is when you get a cut, is platelets, they stick to the cells, the epithelial cells that have been injured, have been cut. And once those platelets stick to those epithelial cells, they start to release chemicals that basically makes all the platelets around them sticky, so you get even more platelets sticking to that cut, and that forms a plug so the cut stops bleeding. And this is going to force a series of reactions to happen that we're going to see on the next slide, but you're not going to be responsible with. That basically, eventually, a bunch of chemical reactions will happen, and you get the release of a molecule called fibrin, which is the main component of scabs. And that fibrin is really nifty because it catches more blood cells and more platelets and makes that clot even bigger. It forms that scab, and the platelets, they pull together, they contract, pulling the torn edges of the skin together, and eventually they also stimulate cell division of new cells. So they're pretty nifty, and they do a nice job helping us to not bleed out. Here's a diagram showing that. So here I have some kind of injury to my epithelial cells. So immediately these platelets, these little gray blobs, stick to that damaged epithelial tissue, and they release a chemical that makes nearby platelets sticky, so you get even more platelets sticking. And those platelets will stimulate here's my more platelets sticking. And all these platelets being together stimulate chemical reactions, which is supposed to be shown down here. So prothrombin is changed to thrombin, which causes fibrinogen to be changed into fibrins. All this you don't have to know. Just know that fibrin, this chemical, is eventually produced that creates this scab-like structure and helps to catch other red blood cells, catch other platelets, and make the clot larger to help stop the bleeding. Okay. So then the last little topic we have to talk about in blood is blood typing, which we already mentioned a little bit in genetics, but we want to bring it up again just because it's appropriate here. So here I've drawn a little red blood cell, and on the surface of red blood cells are these things called antigens. So you can think of antigens as little, maybe receptors, so I'll draw them like this. Okay, and these, we have two different types of antigens. We have A antigens and B antigens. So if you have A antigens on your surface, then you have A-type blood. If you have B, you have B-type blood. And if you have A and B, you're blood type AB. And if you have none of them, you're blood type O. So that's your red blood cells. But also, remember, in your blood, we also have antibodies. So antibodies are a type of protein. So if my red blood cell had A-type antigens on the red blood cell, it would have B-type antibodies in the blood. So now, if some foreign substance or B-type blood or B-type red blood cells ever got into this blood, this antibody would then attack B-type blood. So if you have A-type blood, you have antibodies that will attack B-type blood. And we went over this in the genetics unit a little bit. But just because we have to complicate things, because, that's what we do, in addition to having A, B, or O, you have heard some having A positive blood or A negative, or B positive, B negative, O positive, O negative. And that positive and negative refers to an additional antigen, an additional thing on the surface of the red blood cell that comes from what we call the Rh system. So if you have this, so maybe I have A-type blood, so I'm going to draw my little A antibodies again, or antigens, I'm sorry, that was a misspoke there. Here's my A antigens. So if I'm A positive, I'm also going to have the Rh factor. Okay? So if you're positive, you have the antigen, you have the Rh factor. And if you're Rh negative, you don't have it. So therefore, when you're doing blood transfusions, when you're trying to give someone blood, you have to pay attention to both the ABO system and this Rh system. So that's it. That's all we have to talk about blood today. We'll see you in video 5.